And welcome back. Thank you for staying with us. Time for a Sunday Live interview. As mentioned earlier, we're discussing what really happened at the Assembly of State Parties and what can it do in as far as Deputy President William Ruto's case at the ICC is concerned. Joining me now is the leader of the majority, Aden Duale, who led a delegation of MPs to the ASP last week. We also want to note at this point that we did reach out to various members of the civil society who were against Kenya's bid and offered them the opportunity to come on this program and defend their position. None of them took up the opportunity. Nonetheless, as they say, the show must go on. What for you is the evidence that Kenya's work at the ASP was a significant win, because that has been contested?
Thank you, Anne. I wish you could have shown, a clip of the text as approved by the plenary on the night of Thursday. But let me come to the whole gist. In the 12th ASP at New York, 2013, an amendment to Rule 68 was brought by none other than the United Kingdom. And that amendment was very clear that retroactively it will not apply to any case that began before that date, which was 27th of November 2013. That was the spirit in which the Kenyan delegation and the ASP began before that date, which was 27th of November 2013. That was the spirit in which the Kenyan delegation and the ASP member states adopted. Now, when the judges were implementing that amended Rule 68, themselves, in their judgment, they said there is ambiguity in this ASP resolution and more clarification was needed. So the Kenyan delegation had two requests to the Assembly of States. One was to clarify, as the judges have asked, Osuji has asked, to clarify the amended Rule 68 of 27th November 2013. The other one was to set up an oversight independent mechanism based on 5 eminent judges to be appointed by the Assembly of States to audit how witnesses were sourced, were identified, were recruited
in those two cases.
In those two cases.
Right.
The parliamentary delegation was composed of both sides of the House, both the opposition and Jubilee. And mainly they came from the legal, the defense, and the delegated legislation committees. When we went there, the first hurdle Kenya faced was even to consider our request in the agenda. But later, we convinced all the 5 regions. The ASP is composed of 5 regions: Latin America, Africa,
5 diplomatic regions.
Asia, Western Europe, and Eastern Europe. So once our agenda was considered, a number of regions came on board, and we convinced them that what we are looking for is not an amendment to Rule 68. What we are looking for is not a suspension of Rule 68. What we are looking for is what the judges have asked, and that is a clarification, a reaffirmation of what was passed in ASP 2013.
As a resolution.
As a resolution then.
Which did not happen. It did not happen as a resolution.
Yes.
However, after various meetings and horse trading on both sides, it ended up being admitted into the report by the president on this particular ASP. And what the civil society are arguing, that your win at best was hollow, to the extent that while ASP reaffirmed Rule 68 was not to be used retrospectively, as you have just mentioned, this is not a legally binding document. It does in no way compels the appeals court that is hearing an appeal right now by Kenya on the use of 68, or the trial chamber, to take on these views legally.
No, in fact, and you should not speak for them. They should have Otieno should have been here.
I have to give both
No, I'm saying George Kegoro must have been here.
Well, they were.
And at least I saw Mr. Ndumbi there. And they left the third day of the conference. But let me come to it. Once Kenya convinced 4 regions, we convinced and they accepted the Kenyan text. And if you allow me, I have a copy. I'll read it to the audience.
If you could keep it brief, sir.
Yes. One region disagreed with Kenya, and that is Western Europe. And we understood the case. And also the British. The British stood their ground. And we understood because the whole essence of them introducing Rule 68 in 2013 was for very mischievous reasons. The Bureau adopted the Kenyan text on Thursday. From there, it went to the plenary. And it is in the resolutions. You can Google the ASP conference resolution. It's in chapter 18. It's in chapter 18, article 64. If you read it exactly the way the Kenyan delegation, the African delegation, our clarification, in fact, was an African Union clarification.
But what part of it is legally binding? What part of it actually will force the appeal?
I am coming to that.
If you would, sir.
I am coming to that.
If you would.
The legislative arm of the ICC court is the ASP. Is the law-making body. So any resolution passed at every 2 years at the ASP conference is binding and is to be implemented and applied by the judges. That copy of that resolution, as we speak, is with the judges, is with the prosecutor, is with the registrar, is with the judges, both the appeal chamber and the trial chamber. If they don't use the reaffirmed, the clarified rule, amended Rule 68, where it says very, very clearly that recanted evidence will not apply retroactively to the cases that began before 27th November 2013, then we can tell you authoritatively then they have a predetermined position in as far as the case of the Deputy President and Joshua Rapsaj is concerned.
And if that was to be the case, if the judges were to say that we cannot be bound by the politicking of member states, that we are independent, and then they choose to go differently, what will Kenya's move be?
No, and listen, in our own scenario, it's the parliament that makes laws. It is the judiciary that implements those laws. The ICC is a creation of the ASP, is a creation of the member states. The Rome Statute, as we see it, as being implemented by the judges, is a creation of the member state. So that scenario will not happen. Number two.
Well, you hope it will not happen.
No, I'm telling you, it will never happen. You know, it's like today, you tell me our Court of Appeal, our Supreme Court, will have their own sets of law different from the laws which are passed by Parliament. Even our Constitution is passed by Parliament. But let me give you the history of the civil society. That's why they're not here.
I don't want to discuss the civil society for the very reason that they're not here, and this really isn't about Kenyan CSOs. It's about the performance of the Kenyan government.
Let me tell you. On Thursday, George Kigoro tweeted that the ASP president has left. If you look at that tweet and you look at my following tweet, the president was chairing. But let me come to this, because we need to tell the country the history of the civil society.
No, I do not want to enter that discussion, sir, for the reasons I've already mentioned. Number one, they are not here. Number two, this is a discussion about the performance of ASP.
Number one.
And I must move on because I'm being counted down on time here. The other issue that you had raised is that Kenya also wanted the 5 jurists, as you had said, appointed, you know, one from each regional block.
The Assembly passed that within the reading of Article 112, sub-Article 4 of the Rome Statute, which provides for an independent audit on the office of the prosecutor, on the office of the judges, on the office of the registrar, must be operationalized. It has never been operationalized. So the resolution in 65 of chapter 15 of the resolution passed by the plenary says how a team must be set up within the ASP to look into an independent audit of how the witnesses were sourced, were recruited, were identified for the Kenyan case. But you know, you brought me here, the history of the civil society is known. They didn't want Uhuru Kenyatta and William Ruto to stand. They went to court. The 5-bench judge in 2012 refused. They went to the Supreme Court to challenge the validity of the win of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Today, when they're in the Hague, they're not called AFRICOM, neither they're called, they're called Coalition for ICC. I mean, that's how they get their per diem, they get their accommodation, they get their accreditation. But what I'm coming to say is,
arguably, that's how Kenyan MPs went to The Hague, but their per diem as well. They are fully paid by the National Assembly and the Senate. The records are very, very clear. They come from various committees. A petition was placed before ASP, signed by 190 members of parliament from across the political divide. Jacob Midio signed, John Bandi signed, all of us signed. We were there because we had an agenda. But coming to the final essence is that the Deputy President and Joshua Arap Sang and all the other Kenyans who were there believed in the rule of law. They had their defense counsel. We still believe in a fair justice. But we don't want where goalposts are fixed. The African Union is very, very clear. Even for your information, the South African agenda was also adopted, where ASP must interpret how to deal with a former head of state. So what we're telling with all the people who are making noise, you know, when I see my very good friend, my former speaker, Bitobi Manyara, who was not in The Hague, I see Makau Muto. Today he's tweeted, he's saying it's not Rule 68, it's Rule 69, Sub-Article 3. Rule 69, Sub-Article 3 deals with where the prosecution and the defense concurrently agree on how to use a particular set of evidence. So what we're telling them is, for us, we went to the ICC, coming to the ASP, with one single agenda, to make a clarification, to make sure that, as the judges have asked, we clarify how Rule 68 should be used, and we clarified that it cannot be used retroactively in recounted evidence to the case of the Deputy President and that of Joshua Arap Sang. And I suppose we will wait and see whether the court will take notice of that, and it will affect
the court is junior to the legislative assembly.
Those are your words. We'll see. We'll see.
It's not my word.
We're out of time, sir. We're out of time, but we will see if the Court of Appeal will agree with that interpretation. I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Aden Duale, the leader of the majority in the National Assembly. We're taking a short break on Sunday Live.